So let's go over what we established already. Please go back and watch all the videos in the series. Yes, binge me, but more importantly, I want you to be able to follow the logic with everything that I'm saying. First of all, this is coming to me via downloads and my intuition, and then I go and I look for the evidence of it. So please, just to get caught up, I want you to binge the videos in the series. The playlist is called The Syncretism of Goddesses and Gods. So here are the Cliff Notes versions of what we know, what I've established so far. Starting with book readings from the Great Cosmic Mother, we just established that existence related to a mother before a god, or before that word even came into use. We also talked about how the patriarchy was ushered in via religion. They actually kind of go hand in hand. That was also touched on in a few different books, but Great Cosmic Mother as well. Inside the Judaic religions at first, there was the god El, who was the head of the Elohim, and he had a consort, Asherah. I believe those things you can read in the Bible. We went over and talked about Asherah and her other names, her daughters, especially on the Easter video. We talked about how El was slain, and this story actually spans across different cultures. There's a similar story of a male god being killed by his son, basically killed by his son. And then he was replaced, and the throne of God, El sat on the throne of God at first, but after he was killed, and I don't even know if that particular part is in the Bible, it goes to someone else. But in the Bible, they repeatedly use Lord and God over in different ways. But in the original translations, those instances were not all the same. But in the translations, they just decided to use God and Lord all the way through. It waters down the original meaning because it's not carrying over exactly who and what we're talking about. Because at this point, we've established there was the Elohim, there was El, the God, there was Asherah, and then there was Yahweh and their children and their other children. So we also in the series go over syncretism, and I give some of the examples of how they transfer attributes of El to Yahweh, and also Baal and Yahweh, their attributes get merged together, as well as Asherah's attributes get absorbed. All of them get absorbed into one God, one monotheistic religion. And so now basically God, the throne of God has Yahweh on it. So seeing it like this helps us understand more so about the titles, and that in a lot of these instances, there's a title being used. And so Lord is definitely a title, and it was originally synonymous with Baal, and I'm going to give some information on that later. So one of the first things I want to do is talk about Yahweh and El. So I found this book, The Early History of God, by Mark Smith, I believe is his name, but he has some explicit quotes, basically things that I was insinuating and getting at in my series, that this book comes right out and says. So here it goes. The original God of Israel was El. This reconstruction may be inferred from two pieces of information. First, the name of Israel is not a Yahwistic name with the divine element of Yahweh, but an El name with the element El. This fact would suggest that El was the original chief god of the group named Israel. Second, in Genesis 49:24 through 25, it presents a series of El epithets separate from the mention of Yahweh in verse 18. So yet early on, Yahweh is understood as Israel's God in distinction to El. Deuteronomy 32:8 through 9 casts Yahweh in the role of one of the sons of El, here called Elion. And that verse says, when the Most High Elion gave to the nations their inheritance, when he separated humanity, he fixed the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of divine beings. For Yahweh's portion is his people, Jacob his allotted heritage. This passage presents an order in which each deity received its own nation. Israel was the nation that Yahweh received. It also suggests that Yahweh, originally a warrior god from Sinai, Paran, Edom, Teman, so all of those refer to the same place, was known separately from El at an early point in early Israel. Perhaps due to trade with Edom, Yahweh entered secondarily into the Israelite Highland religion. All right, one more quote from this book. The priestly theological treatment of Israel's early religious history in Exodus 6:2 through 3 identifies the old God El Shaddai with Yahweh. In this passage, Yahweh appears to Moses, and God said to Moses, I am Yahweh. I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh, I did not make myself known to them. This passage reflects the fact that Yahweh was unknown to the patriarchs. Rather, they worship the Canaanite god El. So this is telling you that they switched gods. They didn't know Yahweh. This is in Exodus. I don't know if this is preached about in churches or not, but they switched gods from El to Yahweh. And so basically the question that I'm posing is, I hadn't been aware until recently, and that's why I'm doing the series, but how do you feel about that? Because this is letting you know that there are multiple gods. Which one do you want to serve? Which one is the creator? If they're both gods, who's the creator? Which one is the true God? And does that matter to you? That certainly matters to me, but I'm not sure if, it doesn't seem as if humanity has clocked this on a collective scale, because I can't understand why anyone would want to worship something that was not the creator. Like the original God to me would be the creator, right? So what are we doing? And have we been deceived? Is basically what I've been asking. So I want to talk about Lord as a title, and that God basically is a title too. So what I have on the screen are noble ranks. And what made me think about this was watching Bridgerton and how everybody's a lord. Lord and lady, those are titles. And look, they're like the lowest title. But Lord is a title. And look at the ranks. So a knight is more than a lord, and it just goes up from there. Baron, viscount, count or earl, marquis, prince, duke, archduke, grand prince, grand duke, king, and then emperor and empress. So this is interesting, to say the least. And so basically what I want you to get from that is I think we should be specific. It's such a habit for us to say Lord this and Lord that, and it's all throughout the Bible. But in the reality of language, Lord is a title. All right, and so this is why this is very crucial is because the biblical Lord is not a Hebrew invention. It is a continuation under new guise of Canaanite divine lordship, particularly that of Baal. So what this is telling us is that Lord was synonymous with the god Baal or Baal, Baal, whatever you want to call him. And so when we're saying Lord, originally this was synonymous with Baal, but this was one of those syncretism tactics that they used when they decided to merge attributes. And so they merged the whole thing about the Lord with Yahweh, but originally that was associated with Baal. So we need to take a closer look at what and who we've placed on the throne of God, and if that is the one true living God. Secondly, I already said we need to stop saying Lord. I think I already said that, but I'm just going to say it again because you might be calling on the one you don't want to call on. So what I see here that's happened is that what Game of Thrones taught us about usurping the throne is that there's been a usurping of the throne. And it happened originally with the original code, the mother, the matter, the Ma'at, the great cosmic mother, which is just the creator. And mother helps us think of that in a feminine form because that's what feminines do. They give birth. Men, male, masculine, they don't have wombs and they don't give birth. But our original creator gave birth to us. And for millennia, there was a certain way that this world was. And look at us now. It's been turned upside down. It's full of war and all types of atrocities. And it's almost like, in some cases, hell. So we have to ask ourselves, who or what is this God because ain't no way, like how, in what world, in what universe, it happens in the universe that's upside down where they have deceived the entire world and told us that God. So this is why you hear people start to use, and myself, say things like the universe, the creator, the divine, the source, is because we're trying to point out and speak directly. Because just by saying God it's conflated. Even when you look up the word God, it has not always been in the vocabulary, especially, millennia ago. I believe the word God is just 1,400 years old. And it originates from a German word. They weren't saying God. But just like I've been talking about, a rose is still a rose by any other name, that we're using the word God, right? But I think most of us have the same thing in heart and in what we mean by that. I think in our hearts, we're definitely feeling as though we're calling on the creator, like God, the original God, in our hearts, right? But in our minds, it is perceived differently because of language and what we've been taught through religions. And I do speak about this on one of my videos. And I appreciate you guys for bearing with me and giving me time to cook. I need time to cook. And I am neurodivergent. I was born during Mercury retrograde. So it makes me very unique with my communication. So I appreciate you. I thank you for being here, and I thank you for, listening to the video as I communicate with words. And here's the thing, is like, that's a part of this as well, because language is the best we can do to try to communicate things that we feel and things that we know, things that we can perceive on the inside. We created language to communicate that. And the thing that we are discovering, that I'm discovering and I plan to get into, is that the sounds that we make vibrate at frequencies and create the world. So in the Bible, when it talks about the world being created with sound and words, that's what it's talking about. And so that is encoded into the languages. So our brains have two facets. It has what we know as a masculine, the right brain or the left brain, basically. And the left brain is considered more masculine and uses language and analysis and stuff like that. Numbers. Well, I won't say numbers because that's more feminine, but language and words and logic, right? Logic. And then the other side of the brain is more so symbols and colors and just things that are images, not necessarily words. And both of those come together to give us that whole brain experience. And I think that is the perfect mirror of what has happened in our world with what religion in this way has done. It has cut us off from an entire half of existence. And it has us imbalanced and leaning towards one side only. And I do think that that's by design. And by design by who is, that's a whole investigation, and series on that. But a part of reclaiming what I call the feminine, the divine feminine, or the goddess within, is understanding this about our consciousness, and religion has facilitated how we perceive reality and how we relate to existence. And in everything that we see natural, it has a counterpart. There's a feminine and a masculine aspect. And that's the way we used to perceive divinity in prehistoric times. In prehistoric, I just mean prehistory, pre-recorded history. And we have to go to books like The Great Cosmic Mother that have done the research and gives us the archaeological evidence of matriarchal lineages and cultures. They're all over the world. It's everywhere. But this was not a part of the plan for this new world that we've been living in the past at least 2,000 years. We've been cut off from one whole half of existence being, perception, and it makes us a very imbalanced society, especially in the West. There are other cultures and people who have a more holistic view of divinity, meaning there are masculine and feminine aspects to it. And so therefore their consciousness expresses differently in their culture and amongst their people. And you don't see some of these same imbalances within their communities. But these types of things are prevalent in certain communities because of this type of programming. And there is an agenda to make this widespread worldwide. And you see that it bleeds into other cultures all over the world all the time. We refer to this as patriarchy, but I do believe it's deeper than that. And I do not want my men to be offended by this, because right now I'm using the words that we all understand to describe what I'm seeing and what's being given to me, but it's really for lack of a better word, because remember, there's always the problem of language. And there's also this renaming that has gone on since the beginning of history, this renaming and this reassigning. And so the whole idea of being trans is not new. The whole idea of gender reassignment is not new, actually, because this is a very old and ancient tactic that's been going on for centuries. There has been a gender reassignment to the divine feminine herself, but in smaller instances of women and their roles and contributions to society. It gets deep. And so this is what I'm going to be getting into. The biggest thing here is that in, what some may call goddess culture, is we had oracles, right? And we still have oracles, but I would be considered one of them today. But the prophets, right, are orators. And before the men came into the temples and took over the roles of priestesses as priests, all of the temples were filled with priestesses who connected directly to the divine feminine, which I just mean to the earth, to creation, to existence. Okay, and I don't want you to get caught up in the word earth. Okay, I just mean existence. All that is God, is it not? Wouldn't that be God? Nature and existence? Or the first mother. And so the oracles would do their thing. People would come into the temples, and kings and rulers would come to these temples and get prophecies, ask questions, and make inquiries. And these women there, they were connected to the earth, the womb of the earth, through their wombs. All of this was going on before patriarchy came and started to replace. This is why priests wear robes. This is why they wear robes, because what they're doing is attempting to mimic what was happening before, because there were women there. And all of this is detailed in The Great Cosmic Mother. You also can see it in the movie Barbie. The new Pope, I mentioned this, I believe, before, if you were been with me. I know I talked about it somewhere. It's called Conclave. But if you haven't watched that movie, you should watch that movie to the end. It is crazy. But if you study this stuff and you watch that movie to the end, it's going to make sense to you. It's going to all start coming together. It's because, they basically represent, in a way, like patriarchy from the religious aspect. All those men in those robes, and basically it's kind of like the modern world looks in that direction as like the supreme voice of God, even though it's not true, right? It's very fake. It's not real. I mean, look at this world. It's evil, It's because it's all of that is just a sham. It is not real. So watch the movie Conclave, but all in all, the feminine, for lack of a better word, the other aspect of God, the nurturing side, the side that gives birth, that produces what you need from her own body, right? Nurturing, love, peace, harmony, where things are in sync. There are natural cycles to things, life and death, sunrise and sunset. There are natural cycles. Just being in sync, right? The circle of life. The lion has a place all the way down to, the insects. When we look at the circle of life, everything has a place in nature. So just the aspect of things being in sync and in serenity and working together, being in balance, things growing from the earth because we get rain and sunshine, the earth actually producing food for us to eat. Like, how magical is that? Have you guys ever thought to think about that? Things actually grow out of the ground for us to eat? It's quite amazing. Acknowledging that as divinity would be described as feminine. The way that our bodies work naturally, knowing and being aware of that. Knowing that our minds, our brains produce images while we sleep that connects to our subconscious mind in a greater collective that is basically like an in-house therapist. And that happens naturally. But those types of things are not supported, pushed, or taught inside at least most Christian doctrine or Christian churches, because none of it is where and aligned with what it needs to be. So dream work was one of the core practices of spirituality, is tuning into the messages there. And it's been suppressed. It's been suppressed. And so I am inviting you to get back into dream work. Start dreaming again. Start dreaming again. I will be hosting a dream workshop at the end of this month. I've been recording and studying my dreams for like 15, almost 16 years at this point. And I've learned so much. If you know me, you know. I've talked to you about a dream that I've had before and some of the experiences that I've had. And so, this is a part of the work that I've been called to do. I did not know it at the time, but I've been called to do this work, and I finally arrived to here where everything comes together and like, oh, this is it. Everything comes together. So watch the entire series. Follow me on Instagram, like and subscribe to the channel here. I want you to be looking for this dream workshop that I'm doing and read the description, because I have I just have so much. I'm not going to try to dump it all on you right now, but I have so much for you, and I want you to have that. I want you to have this. So we all have this goddess, okay? What we're going to refer to as a goddess within us. And it's the feminine balance that this world needs right now. And it starts with each one of us reclaiming the goddess within and balancing out as individuals. Then we'll start to see collective changes across the board. All right, so I'll see you in the next video.